I'm Edie Lush here for Hub Culture at the Monaco Transition Forum. Elspeta Klein, you're the Director and Global Head for Climate at the IFC. Tell me, the IFC is the largest investor in emerging markets. Why is climate so important now?
Climate is essential, and climate is the biggest threat that we have in front of us today. But we also believe that it's the biggest opportunity that we have, especially in emerging markets. Why is it an opportunity? Because it's going to be companies, private sector, that are going to make a real difference. Governments can set up good policies, good regulatory environment, good incentives for companies to come in, but it's going to be the companies that are going to make the biggest difference in the largest emerging markets of this world.
And why does it have to be emerging markets? We've seen, we're in Monaco here, we're in a developed country. I'm from the States, I live in the UK, I see a lot about clean tech there, but why do you think it's emerging markets that are going to make the biggest difference?
A lot has happened in the US, a lot has happened in the UK, in Europe, but it's going to be emerging markets that are going to be driving growth. It's emerging markets where we are seeing 6, 7, 10% growth year after year. And this is where we are seeing energy needs that need to be covered mainly through renewable industries. It's going to be climate smart agriculture. Our food, by and large, comes from emerging markets, and this is where the difference has to be. But even more importantly, 70% of cities in South Asia have not even been built. If you can build them green, you are going to make a big difference. In Europe, we have built it all up. We can deal with energy efficiency, but the most of the cities are going to be built in emerging markets today.
That actually makes a really interesting point, because we've reached a tipping point in the world where over 50% of the world's population live in cities. And from now on, cities are going to be the major source of where people live. And that's because that's where there's money to be made. So where do you see that the most important investments to be made in building these cleaner, greener cities?
You're absolutely right, Edie. Cities are going to be essential in the transformation, and especially in a cleaner and climate-forward transformation. We are seeing it already in many emerging markets. We are seeing it what's happening in transportation in emerging markets, going into bicycle lanes, going into modes of public transportation. We are seeing it in how buildings are being built. Obviously, green buildings come to mind. And if you can build it green in the first place, you might as well build it green rather than retrofit like we're doing it in Europe. And last but not least is waste management. Cities thrive and they generate a lot of waste. And if we can find good ways to invest in waste to energy, we've just done recent projects in China and in Sri Lanka, and we are seeing even smaller emerging markets getting into waste to energy projects. So transportation, waste, and green construction are going to make a big difference.
You mentioned leapfrogging in the ideas of construction in waste. How do you think the digital mobile world plays into this in emerging markets as well?
I do hope that emerging markets will actually transcend developed markets and will skip over a few technologies, just like we have seen in mobile telephony. We are seeing some of it already, especially with renewables, especially with sensors and monitoring. And I do hope that emerging markets will not follow the path that we have followed, but be able to transform much faster and much more efficiently into a greener path for energy. Innovation and technology are key to making this happen. And we are starting to see it now. We are seeing in East Africa companies like Mobisol going into off-grid solar, a number of other companies doing distributed generation of energy. And those are projects that we are not seeing as much in parts of Europe, UK, US, but we are seeing it in emerging markets. And this gives me hope that we will pass over one generation of technology and go to something a lot more cleaner in emerging markets.
And of course, the energy transition is connected to so many of the other sustainable development goals. Where do you see the biggest challenges?
So this is an interesting topic, because up until about 5-6 years ago, anytime we talk about climate, we talked about renewables. And renewables, even for us at the IFC, was 80 to 90% of what we considered climate. But we believe that in emerging markets, there is more to it than just renewables. And as we discussed, transition has to be made in cities. Transition has to be made in green finance, getting emerging market banks to finance green projects, climate smart projects, and teaching them how to do it, and hopefully supporting green bond issuance from emerging markets like we've done with Amundi. It is about climate smart agriculture, because food is being grown in emerging markets, and as we see the growth of middle class in emerging markets, there has to be a focus on efficient and effective way to do climate smart agri. And of course, clean energy transition remains part of the topic, but it's far beyond just clean energy, and it really has to go into how we eat, how we move, what we deal with our waste. and how we finance projects.
Elzbieta, thanks very much for stopping by the Hub Culture
Thank you very
Corner
much.
here in the Transition Monaco
Thank
Forum,
you,
and
Edie.
I'm Edie Lush.